Today is September 28th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. We're doing a meeting that's a hybrid in the both in the boardroom and via Zoom. And I'm calling that meeting to order. I'd like to review the agenda. We have the Pledge of Allegiance visitor section, and then we have our new business item, which is the district liaison position. And is there any need to make any changes to this agenda? Bill, do you have any information related to that? Okay, hearing none, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thanks, Al. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Jack. I'm going to take a roll. Nina,
Okay, yes.
Peter,
Here?
and do you want to approve the agenda?
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Alicia,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Al, Nilda. Okay, moving on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me for a pledge of allegiance to the flag. All right. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you all for that. Next item on the agenda is the visitor section, and I think I'm seeing via Zoom at least 3 visitors. I don't know if they all want to speak, but if a visitor would like to speak, they should write their name in the chat. Do we have any visitors that have written their name in the chat, John?
Not yet, but I did just post the instructions 1 minute ago.
Okay, let's just give it a, there's nobody in the room, correct, that wants to speak?
There's
As a
no one with
visitor?
us physically now.
Okay. So if we have no visitors that wish to speak via remote Zoom, I'm going to skip reading the prelude to the visitors section of the agenda, if there are no objections to that, and move on to new business, the reason we're here. District liaison, and this is potential action item. The administration is seeking a motion to accept the district liaison officer agreement between the St. Albans Police Department and the Maple Run Unified School District effective October 1st, 2021. I need a motion so we can have discussion, please.
So moved.
Thanks, Al. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Jack. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to discuss the district liaison officer agreement. I just wanted to, just as a bit of an intro, we had discussed this in early September and determined actually, I think it might have been late August, early in that last week there, just before early September, and made a decision to make an agreement be in effect by October 1st. That's why we're having this sort of special meeting to address that. Bill, I'd like to turn it over to you to discuss anything you would want to highlight related to the district liaison officer agreement, please.
Hey, thanks, Nilda. We've really tried to meet the description that we talked about in late August of having an officer work out of the police station and work on essential duties for the district that were really, let me get you, just kind of go down through some of those, which is around safety and security for the district and working with our safety plans, whether it be for police, fire, or health emergency in the district, to provide instructional resources such for driver's ed, when there's drug cessation programs, and some of the legal things around that, along with civics. They've been a big part of some of our civics instruction at BFA. and to ensure that they're not part of the discipline system anywhere in Maple Run. That's been a big facet that's really very well. Hopefully you see that all those will really spelled out in the agreement. There's several bullets under each, but I didn't think I needed to go through each bullet with you. And that we'll be keeping track of when the officers come on site and why they are asked to be on site to do work. And a lot of it is to provide that to use their title and the word in their title to be that liaison between public safety and the school system in support of administrative work, whether it be working with DCF or students that might have some unlawful acts happening or occurring. I'm more than willing to take other detailed questions, but I just kind of wanted to hit the highlights on that. Nilda, if you think I should go into any more depth, I'd be glad to anywhere around the agreement, or anyone else.
I think you took into consideration our discussion at the last meeting.
Yes, and at the last meeting, it was really, and when we were talking, I wanted to make sure we had clarity around the uniform the officers were wearing and where they were located out of, and you should see that in the agreement.
Yeah.
And that's something that St. Albans Police wanted to make sure we were clear about. So neither the board or the city police, that there wasn't ambiguity around that. We want to make sure we were clear, so we weren't making assumptions.
Right. And this will be signed by Dominic Cloud and the chief of police.
Yeah, Dominic asked that he be a signatory on it for the city, and that the chief and then myself. So your approval would authorize my signature for that.
Okay, and could you highlight for us the financial savings of going from the SRO program as it was to this program?
We were roughly spending out of the local budget, so we won't be spending any Medicaid dollars on this. In the local budget, we're roughly spending about $170,000, and this is 150. The total cost of this has in it 1.5 FTEs for officers. And we think that that's a good place to start. When we looked at the data from what had happened since the start of school to now and the calls that have been happening, that seems about the right FTE right now, but we'll revisit that throughout the year. And by the end of the year, we'll have a better state for next year. The total cost for one officer to the city is approximately $100,000 from talking with Dominic and the chief.
Okay. All right.
So if, as I recall reading the contract, you're going to review it in March and November?
Yep. Yeah, November won't be much more review, but we'll definitely do it. Al, we did a review of this. They've been, the two SROs that have been working, and they're working about a 1.5 right now. I've been keeping a really good log, and I'll be instructing the administrators to do the same. So we have it doubly. We have two versions of the log, and we can compare them for those reviews.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I have a question?
Go ahead.
So we had 3 FTEs before,
Yes.
and we've got 1.5 now.
Yes.
What was the total cost before?
It was approximately, sorry, I'm doing quick math in my head. It was around $250,000
Okay,
approximately. I might be a little off. I'm sorry, Susan, I'm working from afar today.
That's okay.
So I don't have everything right with me at my fingertips.
All right.
And we're using no Medicaid funds.
No Medicaid funds. This will be all local funds.
Bill, I need I have a clarifying question. When you said, when we met last time, that you wanted to hire somebody for security, now that is separate than this 1.5?
Yes, it is.
So will that be through a security company?
No, hopefully not. Hopefully our own employee. We're in the mix. We're out there advertising right now.
And they won't carry firearms or?
No.
And that person would be separate completely from this agreement.
Yeah, it's not part of this agreement. It would be a contracted MRUSD employee. as it has in school systems without SROs. They have similar positions.
Right.
So will that be the only additional position, or are we going to potentially find ourselves hiring more positions to fill these 3 positions that we once had?
Currently, this is the only planned position, but I can't tell you as things change that we wouldn't have to add more. I can just tell you right now from what we've seen and the analysis that the leadership team and I did, that this is the one place where we need to add a position.
Okay. I guess I was wondering about the mental health aspect of it. That was, I guess, my more specific question.
Well, this is a someone that would come from the mental health field.
Okay.
As I said to you at the last meeting.
Okay.
And we've added, I'd have to go get, and it's probably a good thing for Alexis to do this fall, is to give you a report, an update on our mental health system that we've been putting together. If you remember about a year and a half ago, she came to you, and then we hit COVID and really haven't given you an update, but she showed you the plan of all the positions. And I can tell you just at BFA, we added 2 positions this year.
Okay.
For mental health support folks.
So I had another question piggybacking on Al's. So I read that we're going to get, well, there will be reports in November and May. Will the school board be, get a copy of those reports, or will that be discussed in a school board meeting?
If that's the will of the board to have that on the agenda, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Is that the will of the board?
It's
I'd
the
be
will of,
surprised. I'd be surprised if it wasn't the will of the board, Bill.
Yeah, I would be too, but you and I have said that we want to ask those questions, so.
I agree. So certainly, I mean, you guys have to review the report, but as soon as it's available after, like the next meeting after you guys have done your review, it should be reported to us as, especially in this, more reports on this are better than none or less, because it's a new program and we want to have a good handle on it,
I agree.
What will this report have in it?
Basically a list of instances and types of instances and response pieces to it. That's what we've been tracking right now.
Will this include like race? And I know we've talked about the ethnicity and stuff, and that type of breakdown too, or is that a different report?
That may be a different report.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean we can't do it. It just means it might be a different report.
Okay. We've just talked about points like that before. Okay.
Yeah.
This just popped into my head, but I know this is a metric that is sometimes used in other arenas. If there was, let's say there's an incident at a school that the student, I'm losing my brain here, the district liaison officer needs to handle, can we implement a time frame with how, spent an hour and a half dealing with this issue, that kind of thing, so we can get a sense of how long some of these events take to process? I think that number is probably not that difficult to track. What do you think? Is that like micromanaging, or is it just I'm trying to seek clarity. My intention is not to micromanage. I'm just trying to understand how long does it take to process some of these types of events.
So they go all different amounts of times, Nilda.
Yeah.
And we haven't done a time study, but if that's something the board requests, we could do that, I suppose.
I mean, I like I said, I'll ask if it's the will of the board, but I'm just, for us to find out that there are 10 of these events and 10 of these events and 15 of these events doesn't necessarily tell the whole story.
No, and you can have the same type of event, and some of them are an hour and some of them are multiple days.
That's why I'm thinking if there's some qualifying information, like even if it was just took less than 2 hours, more than 2 hours, or some sort of break points to give a sense. And maybe we only do that after the first try or something. And maybe I'm being crazy, but I just, I want to be able to evaluate our success, and I'm not necessarily sure how we're going to do that. You know what I mean? Like, So if we have metrics that we can at least compare from quarter to quarter, every, report to report. I don't know. I'm thinking
From
I
here
could-
on forward.
So can I suggest that I may be out of line here, so you can tell me I am, Nilda. But I'd rather go work on that and bring that to you and tell me if it gives you the information you need or not, and
That
get
would be
better
great.
on it.
Yeah.
Then have a brainstorming session here at the board
I'm
on
fine with
report
that.
templates.
I'm fine with that. I'm just, you get what my goal is. My goal is to try to be able to measure
Right.
success, and I'm not sure. I
Right,
know how.
and I'm not sure what success is. So how to measure it is a hard thing to go, and we could go way down a rabbit hole right now
Okay.
with that conversation.
Well, maybe you can work with a team, administrative team, and come up with something or whatever that makes
But
sense.
let me put more heads in the room to.
Yeah, yeah. Does anyone else have any questions for Bill?
I would just say that idea of brainstorming about how do we measure success is going to be a great conversation for people to have.
Well, we'll have Bill come back with, after he works with his administrative team, and come back with sort of what makes sense. And, Bill, obviously, once we see the first report, we may have other questions, right?
So as we talked about in our training, reports take versions to get correct,
Right.
and you don't have them right the first time.
Yep.
Because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't necessarily know what the target is until you try to aim for it and get it. Then you say, this is off. My experience with boards is usually the first one's not that far on, and there's a lot of changes, and then you get less changes as you go. But it's that versioning to get better and better, and refinement
Right.
that happens.
Agreed.
It would be my opinion that we should wait till this goes through 1 year cycle and get a report back then. It's a new program, not following what we were. And it just seems to me that we're micromanaging this whole thing. Let's give the guys that we're paying the big bucks for to do that, and then just come back to us when he feels it's necessary.
I appreciate your comment, Al, but I think we talked earlier about wanting to see the get 2 reports, because they're going to get 2 reports. Administration is going to get 2 reports this first cycle, so they can report out to us. That doesn't mean we're going to necessarily have to act on them. Like Bill said, we need to learn what we need to know. And it'll be good just to get reports, right? We hadn't gotten many reports on any of these issues in the past until this last year, when we, the year before the exploratory year. And so we need to get some data. Any other questions, guys?
I do. Bill, do we have assurance, last time you had told us that there were issues with Lieutenant Talley, I believe, being pulled out, and some other one else being not available for a while. Do we have assurances that they can fulfill the 1.5?
We do until Officer Cook is on maternity leave. And then at that point, they can only assure us the 0.5. And what we've agreed in the agreement is if they don't have an officer that's qualified, and then we both agree is qualified, they won't force fill the position.
Okay, thank you. From a personal standpoint, I was obviously in favor all the way through of the SRO program. The reason being, I felt that the importance of relationships with the officers. And I think, as I read through this, I think it's all very well spelled out. But let me ask you, is there room in here for relationship building? Is there room in here for the officer to make a friend with a child and form a relationship?
So I think those are there's two different concepts you're speaking to, Peter. There's the concept of relationship policing, which is not in there. What is in there is if a parent and a student ask to work with a police officer, that could happen, but there's no mentoring type of program with the police that's initiated by the school.
Okay, my issue would be it's hard to request to have a relationship with a police officer when you've never had an opportunity to get to know him or her. And I understand that's not a question, it's more of a statement.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's not a question, so that's why I didn't respond, Peter.
Yeah, you would have been hard pressed to answer that.
All right.
Actually, can I respond to Peter? So Peter, that maybe we can take the opportunity with the, we are going to review this in November and March again. So if we need to kind of adjust, it sounds like we have the opportunity to do that. Is that correct, Bill? If we find that we might need to adjust some stuff in here, or is that not what that's?
We would probably be working for starting July 1. I would, because you're signing it through the end of June 30th, 2022 is the end. So I wouldn't want to try to renegotiate in the midst of the current contract sitting on the table.
So then what are the reviews for November and March then? To tweak what we're asking, or
just to be just transparent with what's going on?
Okay.
I think it's more like a report out of what the activity has been. And am I correct? Am I putting words in your mouth, Bill?
Well, yeah, that's why I said it's being transparent with what's happening. Yeah, this is what's happening.
But I would hate to look at something in November and have it be in place for 4 or 5 weeks and try to say, oh, this isn't working, or, oh my God, we need to do this. So I think it's just like a pause to get some information, which, obviously we have a board that's hungry for information. So we're going to take every opportunity we can get to get information for us to.
But I think to Susan and Al's, good points is, I just don't want to, I think we have to have a meaningful discussion about what that's going to look like after we see, that pause in November and March, because I don't want to be just gathering information just for the sake of gathering information. And I think, Bill, like you said, the reports will be evolving, but I want to make sure we are doing meaningful and not getting too in the weeds. I can see this going down that road, and that's really not what we need to do. That's not our job, I guess. But I just want to make sure the data that we're getting is meaningful. But I also wanted, if we're going to 0.5 too, that might be a concern as well, especially if we see, these logs where we take that pause in November or March. Do we have an opportunity to, I don't know. I can't predict the future, but I don't want to tie our hands either.
Well, can I interrupt here? Maybe I'm misinterpreting this contract entirely. I thought the November and the two were not for the board to review, but that that's information coming back to Bill and.
Correct, and Bill would come with us, right?
Not necessarily.
No. Okay.
Well, we've requested that at this point. Mm-hmm. So after Bill does his review, then we have requested a report. That doesn't mean it's an actionable report. It's information on a brand new program.
Then we are at this point micromanaging.
I guess I'm going to disagree with you, Al.
Well, I don't. If you're asking the public to bounce up and down, that report is, and maybe I'm wrong, when you this some time was put in to develop this, I got those reports, that we wouldn't find out what they were, but that we weren't weighing them against it, because that's what we have the superintendent.
I do believe, though, can I just say, I do believe as one of the board responsibilities is to have a good understanding of what's going on. So I think, I'm not talking about we're going to have a big discussion, but just have an understanding of how the program is going would be good for all of us as board members to have.
So I think that it's our responsibility. We spent a year.
Yeah.
We had a task force that spent a year exploring all this data. We spent hours at meetings listening to the public. We made a decision that changed basically the whole plan that had been in place. I think that it is incumbent upon us to get a report That doesn't mean we have to act on a report of a program that's been in place for 5 or 6 weeks. But we have been really clear at our training session that we're starving for information and reports, right? So unfortunately, this just happens to be the first one that we get to chat about like this. But I think it would be irresponsible for us not to get the report. And I'm not trying to micromanage. God knows I've been trying to stay away from this issue as much as I could in my life. But I think it's our due diligence for a new program. Any other comments? Any other disagreements? Grant?
Yeah, back in August, when we were talking about these programs and making the decisions between SRO, police liaison, nothing at all, one of the main concerns was the safety. And so I'm wondering if any of the parties to the agreement have expressed any concern around safety with the agreement as written, or if everyone is completely happy, with on that end of things.
Bill, can you tackle that?
I can tackle it for myself, but I can't speak for the staff in Maple Run because I hear all sorts of things, Grant, from people not being satisfied with the safety that this will provide to those thinking this will be fine. And I hear, I hear that range, and I want to be honest about that. I don't believe, my experience tells me that safety comes from your system, not from an individual or a position. And that's what that's the training that we receive as superintendents. It's more about the system that you have in place in your school system and the crisis response that you do to it, not necessarily a person or a type of position. And that's how we're trained. Right.
I think that's translatable to a lot of other areas other than schools too, when you think about it. But, all right. I mean, I know, this is an issue that we like to talk about. So I want to give everybody an opportunity to comment, but if we're ready to take a vote on the motion.
Nilda, quick question. So I'm just asking, when the 1.5 goes down to 0.5, is the officer that's going to be out, is she planning on returning after the maternity leave and becoming at 1.5 again? And what's that?
So that's a personnel issue that I can't answer in public session.
Yep.
I mean, right, because it's about.
Well, are we gonna be able to replace them at some point if she decides not to come back? If we found somebody replaceable that could replace her, would we?
That's in that language you already mentioned, right, Bill? That we're gonna.
Yeah, that's in the contract.
That's it. That's to replace the person. Jack, yes, sir.
So a few minutes ago, we were talking about reports and what would be micromanaging and what would not be. I just thought of a parallel. I've been on the NUSI board, the Northwest Unit for Special Investigations, and we supported the police and the investigators on sexual abuse, especially among children. And we got reports periodically that were not specific cases. We didn't want any information about a specific case or about people or whatever, but just data on what the police were dealing with and what kinds of incidents were happening and how many and where, what towns in our county were in Grand Isle, Franklin and Grand Isle, were having the biggest problems and this and that. So if we were asking on the NUSI board, if we were asking about specific cases, that would be micromanaging, in my opinion. But, Al is correct. We need to be very careful not to get into the detail of what incident happened or whatever. That would be micromanaging. But it's good for the board, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, to know, how frequent are things happening, what kinds of things are happening, And what is the resolution of those things? Are we being overwhelmed, or are we successful? Are we helping? Do we need to add anything? That kind of thing. And I think the information, I mean, that's our job as a board, to be, supervising the district, but not micromanaging. I agree with Al. If you get into the detail of any of that, that is micromanaging.
Right.
But I think in general, what are some of the statistics and the amount of information about that?
Great.
And then I think the position, the safety, security position that Bill is talking about is a whole different issue, but I think it addresses the concern that I hear Grant verbalizing a little bit. So that's
Yeah.
my opinion about all that.
Thanks, Jack. And just to be clear, I didn't suggest that we would get that level of detail that would break any kind of confidentiality, HIPAA, FERPA, or whatever other alphabet soup.
Right. No, I wasn't implying
No.
that. I was just assuring Al that, because I could see where he was thinking perhaps,
Right.
that we would be getting into detail of it,
Right.
of incidents or whatever. And that,
We should never be able to
Right.
deduce who the people are involved
Right.
and stuff. But, I think we're going to leave that up to Bill and his team to figure out what the right way to present the report is, and then we can react to a report. Any other comments, or are we ready to take a vote? Going once, going twice.
Take a vote.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept the district liaison officer agreement between the St. Albans Police Department and the Maple Run Unified School District effective October 1st, 2021. All in favor of that motion, you're going to reply verbally. Al,
Yay.
Jack,
yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Alicia,
Aye.
Joanna,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Peter,
No.
Nina,
Yes.
Nilda, yes. Motion carries 8-1. Thank you, everyone, for your discussion. The next item on the agenda is executive session. We have no need for any executive session. Is there any more information that needs to come before business that needs to come before the board tonight? Hearing none, I'd like to call this meeting adjourned at 7:03 p.m. Thank you all for your time.